how humor can become a powerful tool that can contribute to psychological safety and resilience, thinking about when humor is best used and not, what tools can be used to bring out productive humor, and how playfulness can help address challenging organizational problems that are not always visible and sometimes avoided.
Thinking about humor is not all good, it's not all bad, it's multifunctional. What's the function of the humor that you're trying to intend? Because the humor is never the end point.
What if the fastest way to resolve workplace tension wasn't another difficult conversation and a big meeting, but a well-timed, humorous comment? Today, we are exploring something most leadership development training doesn't consider: how humor can become a powerful tool that can contribute to psychological safety and resilience that teams desperately need. And this is going to be a two-parter, okay? And what you're going to discover across these two parts is thinking about when humor is best used and not, what tools can be used to bring out productive humor, and how playfulness can help address challenging organizational problems that are not always visible and sometimes avoided. So, if you are navigating conflict, stuck in unhealthy group dynamics, or simply exhausted by the heaviness of leadership work, this conversation will shift how you think about resilience, insight, and connection as a leader. Hi, I am Dr. Mira Brancu, and welcome back to the Hard Skills. Today and next time, we're going to have two guests talking about this, and today's guest is Dr. Daniel Latimore. He is the founder and CEO of Omeo Consulting, specializing in experiential consultation and organizational innovation. He uses humor, performance, and improv to help leaders and teams extract themselves from challenging dynamics. He has a PhD in counseling psychology and also speaks and trains on topics such as building collaborative teams, employee well-being, and creating sustainable and thriving workplace cultures. So he's going to show us why sometimes the heaviest work requires a lighter touch. So let's get into it. Welcome, 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 Daniel. Nice to have you.
Thank you for having me, Mira. I'm really excited to be here.
Yes, absolutely. I'm super excited. Now let's start with, you like to name yourself a comedic philosopher, which reminds me of Mel Brooks. In one of his movies called The History of the World, he played Comicus, the stand-up philosopher, which is hilarious. But you go by comedic philosopher. I would love to hear, what is your definition? What is this?
Yes, first of all, shout out to Mel Brooks. When he hears this, I just want you to know, big fan of the work. Thank you for what all you've contributed to humor and the comedy circuits. For me, comedic philosopher is that I have lived a life. I've lived a life, a lot of life. And there was just a point where you really sit back and just, in a very Viktor Frankl logo therapy way, you're thinking, how can I make meaning of this? And I've always had a bend toward comedy. When I was growing up, I just knew something in comedy, whether that be stand-up. I didn't initially know improv, but even being in a comedic actor or something, I just knew comedy humor was going to have its role. And here I am, so many years later, still interweaving with gratitude humor into my work.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so tell me about, you were a stand-up comedian and you, over time, got into consulting as a psychologist. And I would love to hear how you think about those coming together, because you still do lots of comedy, right? Like, how have those experiences shaped the way that you work?
Absolutely. It started out with doing open mics during my undergrad years at the University of South Florida. Go Bulls. I was fortunate enough to do some stand-up comedy here and there. I was really interested. We had a very strong just space of talent in Tampa and the greater Orlando area. So I was looking up to those folks when they were doing their stand-up, and I was like, this is what I want to do. And then my big break came. I got to I got to open for a larger name, and I failed. I failed miserably. It was it was hard. I was young. I knew I had everything figured out at 18, 19, somewhere around there. Uh, and life handed it
Of
to me.
course
I
you
was like,
did.
"Oh, as anyone does." And so that really stuck with me, and I was like, "Wow, is this is this what I wanna do?" And, I'd hear folks say, "You could be at this 20, 30 years and never make it." And so, in my mind, that was the metric, was making it. I was like, "Oh, no. If I don't make it, then, why should I do it?" I hadn't discovered my why yet, but I continued to study, continued to research, and I was like, humor is not done with me yet. So I looked to go into a master's program, think about counseling. That's really what I was training to be, was a psychologist. And just thinking about humor is not all good. It's not all bad. It's multifunctional. And
Mhm.
I don't see too much research on humor as it stands. And even through the tighter lens of humor therapeutically, and then humor as a person of color, therapist of color's lens. So I just thought there was just a fascinating world there, such that I got to continue to interweave it. And that led into, what are the therapeutic effects of humor? What are the functions of humor in an organizational setting? We've seen humor land, we've seen humor bomb, we've seen humor make light of serious situations when it was necessary or not necessary. We've seen
Mm.
people punch up, punch down. I was just fascinated with that world and still carrying it today.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit more about that because, yes, I mean, psychology is the study of understanding people. It's also about how people connect, how they communicate, and humor is certainly part of that, right? It's a part of our way of communication. And you're right that it can be used for good or for bad. So tell me more about, you mentioned that lots of different ways it has been used for good and for bad, and when it's useful and when it's not. Tell me more about when you have seen leaders use humor well. What did they do or why or how? And when they use it poorly, what is it that they're doing and why?
For sure. I can start with times I've seen it used well. Navigating really hard change
Mhm.
management. It's, hey, we we are in the thick of it. We're all experiencing some things, and in this really affiliative nature, we're experiencing it together. We're not alone in this. We can take the work seriously, but not ourselves seriously, because we are not wanting to burn ourselves out by any means. So that is probably some of the more optimal times I've seen leaders use humor. When it's not landing, it's tends to be a bit more punching down, really exacerbating this distance between me as leader and you as worker B, as my mid-level manager, as my frontline staff. And sometimes the worst part is, there's no rapport built to where people can check you on it. So it's like, leader's got the microphone. I'm telling out jokes like, well, Joe's number couldn't be any lower than Joe's numbers. And then we're all ribbing each other, but they're only ribbing because you're the leader. And it's a case of the emperor's clothes, where no one wants to tell you the truth because there's kind of an abuse of power there. So I would say that was probably an example of times we've seen it not work out. It's just not being able to read the room. It's intended to build a connection, and it just furthers the distance. And it's hard. It's hard to watch.
Yeah, yeah. I learned later on in my life, when I was in my 20s, that sarcasm is one of those types of humor that actually is not humorous. It's aggressive. And that's, a lot of what you're describing is aggressive humor where you're punching down, like you said. And it's really more like cloaking bullying or insulting or putting people down in a way where people can't question because, haha, I'm just joking, right? But in fact, it's not a joke. It's not funny to most people. And the first example you gave is, how can I connect us closer, not push somebody away not push down, but connect us closer. That's kind of like what I'm hearing about when humor works and why it's used well versus not.
And you're right on the nose with it, Mira. Anytime I maybe even offer humor as an option, I always ask, what's the function of the humor that you're trying to intend? Because the humor is never the end point. We're using humor so that we can build the rapport, so that we can ease the tension in the room. Are we trying to, like we've gone through something harsh, and is humor the right choice for this? It's not that the humor is a hammer and every problem's a nail. It's that leaders need to use that tool of distinction to really key in, is this the time to use it? And it's the same with more aggressive styles of humor. My research was humor styles as a moderator between racial microaggressions and work volition, and a
Mm.
sample of Black working men. So if I receive a microaggression and I try to use humor, will that buffer me being able to do my job or at least see my career goals in sight? Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. My research says it actually makes things worse. But there's also an understanding of why people might use aggressive humor. Is it because stuff's hard out there and I need a sort of grit type of humor that will match the darkness of the
Mm.
moment? I can't come to the darkness of what we're going on in today's society with sunshine and rainbows all the time. People will pop that bubble 9 times out of 10. So we certainly have to meet the moment, and I encourage leaders to be able to raise that awareness to do the same.
Yeah. This is reminding me of within the Jewish community, we use humor often as a way to manage devastation and tragedy and oppression and all kinds of horrors, right? So, like, we will joke about death all the time. And my husband is like, that's not funny, And I'm like, no, it's really funny. And it really is it's a coping mechanism, right? When you've been through tragedy and horror, right? Or when your people have, right? That's sometimes a cultural thing that just manage, but it's not always received in the same way. And so, like, one of the things you're touching on is it's very cultural. And I remember early on, I volunteered to be an ESL teacher, English as a second language, to adults at a community college. And I was trying to teach them different kinds of humor and like slapstick humor, which is Mel Brooks, and whatever. And they were not getting it.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, wow, this is really cultural and it's really hard to teach. So I'm curious, can you teach leaders to use humor well and wisely at the right moments? Is it something you can't teach? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I love that you brought it to culture, because one of our terms that we come across often is organizational culture. So it's like anytime before I maybe delve into humor and its types, I'm like, what do we know about the culture? What are the written rules? What are the unwritten rules? When this thing happened, when your quarter numbers were down, how did you all handle it as a group? What does your company say? What is the metric around here? Is it that you hired me because you wanted to liven things up? Well, if we're talking about death and dying and organizational trauma, me coming in and doing a tight five might not be the move. So how do we
Yeah.
what's your culture within your business, and at least within your work group, within your board meetings? I want to know, are people glazing over? Are they using memes even? Are they active in the chat? That is all data, so that we can then figure out what type of humor would land, who is the recipient and who is the bringer of the humor, and then how do we navigate those? So really spot on with culture, because it is context. It is all contextual.
Yeah. So if it is cultural, can you teach it?
I believe so. I mean, we think of different formats of comedy, of humor. The stand up, there's a formula, right? There's the setup, the timing, then you have your punchline. You consider your audience, what's going to land with them, what's not going to land. So that can be taught. I think anyone can be funny. Now, it will, or be humorous at least. Now, it won't. Sometimes you have your Jerry Lewis's, sometimes you have your Larry Davids. It's like it's gotta. Sometimes you're gonna have your Chappelles. It's gonna have to land for the audience that you're bringing it to. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
situation. I tell you, just when I think I have my humor figured out, I'll see something situational or different that makes me laugh, and I have to sit with why. I'm like, why? What is it about this that makes like gets a reaction out of me? And how are they able to do that? Was it the music choice? Was it the soundtrack? Was it the lighting? Was it the situation? There's so many contexts or pieces of context. So not to stray away from your original question, I do believe it can be taught and studied.
Yeah. Some of the things I picked up from what you were saying is number one, just like your comedy career, you have to test things out. And sometimes you will notice it will not land and you have to learn, right? And it is directly related to organizational culture. Sometimes you will get it wrong about your own organizational culture. And sometimes you will figure it out. And figuring out unspoken rules of a cultural language, and that includes an organizational language, takes time, it takes testing out, and it takes paying a lot of close attention. And that takes a lot of self-awareness too. Like, how are people reacting? Are they
Hmm.
reacting well or not? And that is like leadership 101 is paying attention to your self-awareness and other people's reactions. And the other thing that I heard from you is, or I picked up at least, is, and I've heard this many other times from other people who do improv, improv is a great tool for learning humor, that it can be taught. You hear the yes and from improv used all the time to teach leaders how to build on something, how to create more innovation, more creative problem solving, not cut people down with the yes or but. And so there are some rules that you can learn. I suck at improv, but I'm good on my feet. And, I had to learn how to be good on my feet. I have clients who say, I'm at meetings with high level leaders and I freeze up and I can't answer questions. I need time to think. I need time to process. Well, I bet some of those things that you described are ways that you can sort of the improv stuff that you can, learn how to think so that you can get better. And it doesn't have to be humorous, but it's the same skills, I think.
Absolutely, Mira. One thing improv not only helps you to do like around building with the yes and, but it also shows you how to be supportive.
Mm,
There are some exercises that it's like a muscle. If all I can do is think critically and think about how something's not going to work, how can I then assure the team that I'm just not being a Debbie Downer, but that there is a reason to why I'm shutting it down, but that I also want to see this built up and I want to see it
mm,
built up. So, but if I'm constantly flexing the no's and not flexing my yes ands, then that's the muscle I
mm.
strengthen. And you can imagine what kind of leader says no 1,000 times. And it's like, well, I just need the one yes. But it's like, that's not good for team morale. If I'm even worried to bring up something to you because I think it's going to be shut down, there can be some wiggle room in that growth space, that support space. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
thank you for bringing this to my attention. And I think what you're hitting on is really great work. I can see that you're wanting to align with the goal that I have set. And I appreciate that. And let's look at it in a certain and different way. Same concept of not shutting it down immediately, but that if my team is the team that I trust to be my growers, my builders, I got to let them breathe. I got to let them strut the stuff. I got to build into my calendar some space for us to build.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is how you pull in psychological safety using this tool. And I know you have some thoughts on how humor and leadership connect with vulnerability and authenticity. And I'd love to hear that philosophy.
Yeah, that's a great tie-in. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're asking about humor and it's tied to leadership, vulnerability, and authenticity
Yeah. Yeah.
vis-a-vis psychological safety. I would say immediately I'm thinking of, we talk about different types of humor. One is self-aggrandizing. Oh, I'm so great. I'm so wonderful. There's also self-deprecating. So I'm putting myself down because it's like I want to highlight the power dynamic in the room because some
Mm.
people are like, I don't see power. And you're like, oh, that's funny. The paycheck certainly sees the difference in power. So it doesn't do any favors to be like, just, oh, there's no hierarchy here. There is. We have titles for a reason, but people might look to maybe bring in more humility by putting themselves down or like really playing up the I'm down to earth, please, let there might be wrong answers, but you will not be judged for them here. Because behind, like, you could be having that train of thought, and behind that one thought that's like pink bunny, you get behind that pink bunny, and it's like, oh, here's a way to scale our business without high costs. But I just had to get the pink bunny out. But if I'm so scared that I can't get pink bunny out, then you might not ever hear that scalable idea. And that's just, I
Yes.
mean, that's how the brain works. It's sometimes we have to be gentle with ourselves. We have to be compassionate with ourselves. And it's like, okay, I know that Pink Bunny is not going to fit what we're talking about in this meeting, but thank you for letting me get it out. I just had to get that out into the side such that I can flex that muscle of trying. It's that muscle of trying
Yeah.
to bring
Yeah.
something forth. And then when you're doing something like an improv or humor, it's laughing with and not at, because you also have to think about the data of what do laughs mean. Is it, haha, that's so dumb. Why would Carl even bring that up? Or is it's like, huh, I didn't think of it that way, but that's interesting. And you know what? That makes me think of this other way. So now I'm not having to fight the wall, but maybe I'm thinking of climbing around the wall. Maybe we dig under the wall. Maybe we come back and say, we leave, come back, take a break, and then see a crack in the wall that we didn't see before. But the less that we allow ourselves to humor up, the oof, harder of a go it can be.
Yeah, yeah. And when you described like using self-deprecating humor to try to help people feel more comfortable when there's power in the room, right? The piece about this that is important is the authenticity piece, right? Like if you fake self-deprecating humor, it is very obvious to most people and it's very off-putting.
Yeah.
So don't do it if you don't believe it.
I laugh because I could just see someone trying to fake like, oh yeah, I look at me putting medium grade gas into my Bentley. Silly me. Look at it. Don't they know it takes some like
Exactly.
premium? This guy, you get it. You're like,
Exactly, and you see that sadly on LinkedIn all the time, like, people are using the, fake self-deprecating humor so that they could get you to read about how important and awesome and amazing they are about their new accomplishment, and you're like, "No, that's very off-putting."
oh yeah, it's so interesting that you bring that up. Like we think it's a misstep. We think the humor in this moment is building authenticity. But then do you have a trusted person? So if I, Daniel, post something and it looks completely inauthentic, do I have a Mira that will message me be like, hey, this is how I read it. Is that how you meant it to come off? I'm like, oh no, I didn't know that that was happening at all. But if I can't have a psychologically safe space for you to slide into my messages and tell me, then I'm taking myself too seriously or I'm really susceptible to my blind spots.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, tell me about now, humor and resilience. You have, done work in, the trauma space. And I'm curious, and that automatically means you've done work in the resiliency space, right? And so I'm curious, what are your thoughts on using humor for resiliency, whether it is leadership resiliency, like for myself, for example, or for me as a leader helping others within an organization improve their resiliency?
When I tell you, we're speaking to humor as a tool, and it can be a sharp blade or it can be like the lubricant you need for the room in the moment.
Mm.
It takes the read because imagine you're going through your tough time and you're leader and you have to, rally your folks. And then it's like, hey, we can do this. We're tired, we're hungry, but if we could just, rally up, and then you tell a joke or something, the risk of it being misread as you're not hearing me, you're not seeing us, you're not seeing the struggle that we're going through. It's a distractor. And rather than giving me more pay or the resources that I'm asking for, you're saying, buck up, buttercup. And that will lose people quicker than anything else because now you've
Yeah.
added a slice of disrespect. So I would say, again, I think that goes back to knowing your people, knowing the culture, having agency, or even promoting agency to your folks to say, hey, I don't want this to be an emperor's clothes situation where no one's able to talk straight with me or say, hey, this is how this is landing. So the severity is just as important as the humor is. So that's one section. If I'm a leader and, I have my company of one, or, just a small team that I work with, I think there is maybe ground rules to any kind of psychological safety. It's like, what do we as a group find funny? What do we think is humorous? Where are the boundaries? Such that I know, okay, we agreed to these parameters. It wasn't something I set as our boundaries and parameters. It's that everyone has an equal voice here, or at least some semblance of a voice if they choose to have that agency. And that will better tailor reading the room, reading the culture, and figuring out, what do we need? Do we need 15 minutes to vent? Like, if the problem is in a room and we just kind of fight club surrounded it, and it's like, okay, everybody gets a line. You tell this problem how stupid it is. I hope you step in something wet. I hope you are hankering problem. I hope you are hankering for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and you don't have any peanut butter. I hope it's just jelly. I hope. And so I think in the absurdity of it, it allows you all as a group to then, one, vent, but also then collaborate and really bully the problem. Short of the problem being a person, we don't want the problem to be a person. But if it's a concept of like imposter syndrome, or not being good enough in our metrics, or that, we got our 4.4 instead of a 4.5, how do we collaborate to make that thing the issue and then tackle it in a way that is cathartic, releasing? Humor gets you the ha-has, it hits the nervous system, it regulates. Also sometimes is a moderator for crying, other reactions. It can be such a powerful tool when used correctly.
Yeah. I just had kind of a curious insight. So you first of all, one of the things that you mentioned as like environmental requirement for humor to work is you have to have like certain kind of boundaries in terms of like with your relationships. And the other thing is trust. And so what I'm curious about is, does humor build trust, or do you need to have trust to be able to use humor well?
That's a great question. I don't know if trust is necessary for it to land well. I only say that because people who meet me on the first go, like, I'm pretty discerning in my use of humor, but I might key into what they've listened to or chuckled at before, or, making sense of what we're going through. And I will try it.
Yeah.
I'll just throw out a feeler, chuckle. And then if it doesn't land, it doesn't land. But if it does, it does. And
Mhm.
it wasn't a necessity for this person to know me ahead of time. That being said, I think, especially if you're in a leadership position, as this is the hard skills podcast, and you're
Yeah.
wanting to think about how you navigate this with employees, I think trust, it wouldn't hurt to have, because your folks would need to know that you would have their best interest at heart, that
Mhm, mhm.
your actions align with that larger goal of, yes, we want to produce in this way, and I care about you as a person, that empathic leadership. So if Mira's leading and they know your heart, they know your style, your energy, then they'll say, okay, they'll know just as you did with that LinkedIn post, if your stuff is landing and what it intended to do versus if it fell off and it didn't feel authentic. So,
Yeah.
even with
Yeah.
ourselves, we'll use humor to deflect. We'll deflect our own stuff. It's like, ha ha ha, ha. And they're like, oh, is everything okay? You don't usually do that. And they're like, well, I'm trying something new. Or, well, actually, it's this other thing I'm feeling. So people are very intuitive creatures. Well, not everyone, but more
Yeah.
often than not. I think there's this pickup of what's behind this.
Yeah. And, even when you have trust, I think what you're adding to this is you still have to pay attention about whether it lands or not. As a consultant, when I do team development, for example, I pay attention to whether people are able to laugh at themselves when we do certain exercises, like we do team level assessments. And when I start describing like different styles and this is how they mesh and this is how they get into conflict, are they laughing about like, "Ah, ha, ha, that's us, that's totally us," right? Or is it like really uncomfortable tension and silence, and someone's questioning the validity of the assessment, and that tells me everything I need to know about where they are as a team and how sensitive I need to be, or how I can help like them bring out their humor to expand their opportunity to connect even further.
100%. Yes. It's not only the exercise or the assessment in itself, it's also how they're responding to it. That really gives a snapshot of like, okay, this is maybe how you operate within your circle. This is like the role, either written or unwritten, that you have taken in the group. And I know icebreaker is a dirty word, but I'll say experiential exercise. When I bring it to the forefront with a team, I say, hey, this is what we're going to be doing. I'm already paying attention as soon as I brought it up. I'm looking at
Yeah.
who's my people to say, hey, I'm going to hop up. I'm going to try this. Who are my, no, thank you. That looks dumb.
Who's the crossing their arms?
Avoiding eye contact,
Don't pick
could
me.
be anywhere. All of that. Yes. And so that's why when you spoke to psychological safety and trust, I try to build that in the exercise such that I
Mm,
say,
mhm.
hey, is it okay that we collectively agree that we are approaching this with curiosity and not judgment? That
Love it.
we will trust that we will debrief what this means after sights, seen and unseen, objectives, seen and unseen, or that we found along the way, where I'm sensing some hesitancy from the group. Have you tried this before and it didn't land? Did someone not, you know, you give you your sense of agency along with the humor? And so that you are just, this is just not your scene. You didn't get it. This is all data.
I love that, and a couple of things that you mentioned that I really love is I heard you asking permission, and I heard you giving them control and agency over how it works. And a lot of times when humor goes wrong, it's because you haven't assessed whether you have permission to go there or whether people feel like you're taking control through the use of humor. And I love how you set that up to like give the power to them. You are offering something to them, but they can sort of like adjust and have, feel empowered to make it work for them.
Absolutely. And I think what I also try to key in for folks is that I'm not only modeling active doing, I'm also modeling active listening. So when I'm facilitating, I have my people who have leaned into the exercise on whatever stage we might have. But I'm also giving like these kind of break the fourth wall moments for my audience to say, okay, and now what we're really looking at is how they're doing this, such that everybody's involved, that I am giving just as much energy to the folks that are raising their hands, just as much as the people who are off to the sides. Because if I'm going to use
Yeah.
humor, if I'm going to do that, I have to have an audience. I have to have the people who are going to carry out, execute the content. Everybody has a role. And the more that you can highlight, celebrate the folks that in every role, every part of that exercise, the better off it becomes.
Yeah. The other thing that I heard several times from you is about listening and paying attention. And I find the best comedians, and I love comedians for so many reasons because they're kind of a mirror up to our, social world. The best ones pay incredibly close attention to details none of us pay attention to. And they point it out in a way that helps us laugh at ourselves while also like learning something. And that also makes a good leader. A good leader is someone who pays really close attention to the details of what's happening in front of them and isn't using humor to deflect. They're not using humor to talk about themselves or manage something that is about them. They are paying attention to what is in front of them and help the folks in front of them connect and understand something in a different way. So, with all of that in mind, what is a low risk way a leader could start using humor as more of a connection tool?
Hmm, that's a great question. I would say, for the sake of authenticity, start with something that makes them laugh. Something they came across that was humorous, something they wanted to share, and start there. Now, and also, here comes the tool of discernment. Sometimes we have, as we stated, darker senses of humor. So read the room. If it feels like it's minimal risk, I would say start there. Just something that they found funny. Another thing could be leaving time at the beginning or end of a Teams meeting or a daily huddle to say, has anyone heard anything that's made them laugh recently?
Mm,
Just something that's made them laugh, because for whatever reason, it doesn't have to have a deliverable or a why. Just, hey, did anybody read anything funny or see anything? And if nobody shares, oh, I saw an old episode of XYZ show that is hopefully not problematic. you either, try to find a neutral space, but like, I don't know, Seinfeld, for example. Oh my gosh, I was laughing at this, and this. Elaine did this, Kramer did this. I don't know. But just leaving space to say that it's okay because you're asking genuine curiosity. I'd say start there, because I think the more that you allow yourself to take the risk or show the risk, that actually models it for other people to say, oh, okay, well, they actually want to hear what I think is funny in this moment.
excellent, excellent. If people want to find out about your work and learn more about how you insert humor in helping people connect at work, where can they go? Where can they find you?
They can find me on primarily LinkedIn. That's probably my hub for my workspace until I get any other websites up. I'm really now collecting, like, kind of retroactively, all the things I did during my master's program, or a time that I was on like Milwaukee's NPR and talked about how I bombed on stage and how it still brings me healing. But I would say start with the LinkedIn, because
Yeah.
I've more than likely posted something about humor.
Excellent, excellent. And audience, what did you take away from today? More importantly, what's one small change you can implement this week? Try it out based on what you learned from Dr. Latimore. Share it with us on LinkedIn because you just heard he lives on LinkedIn. So do I. Share it with us there so we can cheer you on. And if you enjoyed this episode, my love language is referrals, recommendations, and nice reviews. You can leave a review of the hard skills on your favorite podcast platform or on my new YouTube channel at Dr. Mira Brancu. If you're looking for more personalized support, leadership, or team coaching, you could also head to gotowerscope.com to schedule a consultation. And folks, together, we will navigate the complexities of leadership and emerge stronger on the other side. Thank you, Dr. Latimore, for joining me on this journey. And everyone, till next time, stay steady, stay present, and keep building those hard skills muscles, including humor. Take care, everybody.